Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our webinar titled Wildfire in Northern Colorado, Stories and Strategies for Resiliency. My name is Lisa, and I am the Zoom facilitator for tonight's session. I hope you are all doing well, and on behalf of all the hosts and presenters tonight, I would like to thank you for setting aside some time out of your busy schedule to attend. Before we get started, we simply want to set the tone for how things will be operating in tonight's webinar. First, if you are attending virtually, we are using Zoom's webinar platform in order to deliver tonight's session to you. When you join a Zoom webinar, not all participants are on video. You'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you do not have a video option. You only have the option for audio settings with a small up arrow if you need to change the speaker your device is using. We welcome any and all questions you have by using the Q&A option at the bottom middle of your screen. Chat is open for guests to privately chat the facilitator if there are any issues with sound. Towards the end of each presentation, we will have time for live Q&A, so keep those questions coming, and we will pick a few for our panelists to answer before we officially close out each session. Our webinar is slated for 2 hours, and it is being recorded. We want to thank you again and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you so much, and welcome to those who are joining us virtually with the webinar. I know our Landmark County Office on Aging Advisory Council. We're very interested in this forum, but wanted to have a virtual option. So I appreciate Josh and everyone for facilitating. So let me introduce myself. I am Landmark County Commissioner Jody Shag-McNally, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. It is my honor to work hard on your behalf, and I'm so thrilled to have you all here today and have this event. I am born and raised in Northern Colorado, and I have seen my fair share of wildfires, and something I've grown up as a child, learning to leave things better than you find it. And I live west of Loveland in the foothills, and I have seen a handful of wildfires since we bought that property and watched them come closer to my front porch as we watched the flames come over the ridge. And on the Cameron Peak, with the shutdown and my husband worked in the ERs and us all had to be separated, we would join outside and sit on the front porch and look at the waves of the smoke and things coming and evacuation zones coming closer. And believe it or not, people would pull up in my driveway and say, "Can I sit here and wait and watch the flames at night?" And I'm like, no, sorry, we need to have space. And so we had literally cars lined up and down the street looking at flames. So I also work hard on your behalf. I serve on, the governor has appointed me to the Forest South Council, and I take that as a really huge honor and privilege to work on behalf of all of us. There's only 4 commissioners, and there's quite a diverse group. I chair the legislative committee that meets every well, unfortunately, we've been pushing hard. We've been meeting every Friday. And last week, we approved the full council, full new slate of legislative priorities and asked for the legislature going forward. And some of you in this room drove some of those legislative asks. So thank you for that feedback. I'm really excited to have this wonderful panel here today. I can't tell you how much I respect and appreciate all these experts. I'm going to do a brief introduction of them all, and then I'm going to give them just a few. If I miss something you want to share, I'll give you 15 seconds, and we're going to get to the questions. So at least I think I went over my own bio. But anyway, I love to hike 100 miles in Rocky National Park, so I go up and look at these piles and check out burn scars and camp and burn scars. And it's something that's really important to me. And thank you to our partners room to let me go plant trees, because that was healing for me to do that. So thank you. I'm going to go in direction of my guests, and I have to start first with my dear friend and colleague, Commissioner Ashley Stoltzman of Boulder County. County Commissioner Ashley Stoltzman was sworn into office in January of 2023 for a term of 4 years. She's currently vice chair of the board, and before joining the Boulder Board of County Commissioners, sorry, I almost said Larimer. We keep trying to figure out how we can kind of have a joint Larimer border so we can be on a board together. It's our dream. But anyway, she served as the city of Louisville as a council member and later as the mayor. And she was the mayor during the Marshall Fire. So she might be sharing some of those stories. Ashley believes that taking climate action is one of the most important issues facing Boulder County in the world, and that the actions we take in the next decade will determine our path in our future. So once we get through everyone, if you want to add something else to that. And then we have our outstanding and amazing Larimer County Emergency Manager, Lori Hodges, who is also, believe it or not, did you know she's a published author, book author. I have one of her books in my library. Lori is the Larimer County's emergency manager, and over the last 20 years, has over 20 years of experience in emergency management field at both the state and local level. And I got to talk to the deputy administrator at FEMA because I was speaking at a national conference, and she is on the National FEMA Advisory Board, and some of the other people on the panel are on the advisory board. So I said, just tell you hello. And you're a certified emergency manager through the International Association of Emergency Managers and the state of Colorado. And her leadership in the field has been recognized on numerous occasions, as you received Emergency Manager of the Year award from the Colorado Emergency Manager Association in 2008, 2013, and then received the CMA President's Award in 2020. So we're pretty lucky here in Larimer County. I told her she's chained to her desk. She's not going anywhere. And her amazing team. I want to thank Josh and their team and all the staff that help us organize all this, and all of our community partners. And very much not last and very much not least, our amazing leader and state forester, Director Matt McCombs. And he also serves on the Forest Health Council with me. So we'll make sure we don't talk business, since we can't do that. We can talk information, but you have led the Colorado State Forest Service since January of 2022. You are a veteran whose career has spanned natural resources and other government experience. And prior to joining the Colorado State Forest Service, you served as the U.S. Forest Service District Ranger for 1.3 million acre Gunnison Ranger District, the part of the Grand Mesa, Uncompahgre, and Gunnison National Forest, which actually they're having a fire right now. So did you know that? I don't know if you saw those pictures. So anything else you'd like to add to that introduction? Okay. And just want to say the reason I have these books is because Director McCombs and others keep telling me to read books like The Big Burn and the Forest Service. So, and found out some of our staff, including some in the room, are reading these books too. So just to kind of share that we, in our spare time. So I just want to thank you all for being here today. And so we're going to do some facilitated, well, just an opening statement, anything you'd like to share.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Shattuck McNally. I want to start out by sharing that it's just such a pleasure to get to serve as a colleague with you in the neighboring county. Commissioner Shattuck McNally is so passionate and dedicated and works so hard for the community in Larimer County, and it's really inspiring for me to see. And her work, you know, wildfires know no boundaries. And so her work and dedication really will help all of us in Colorado and those of us in Boulder County. And so I'm just genuinely grateful to get to see everything that you do and try to mimic some of the things you do. So I could try to one day be at least in the same ballpark as you. So it's just wonderful to serve with you.
I say same things to you. So
thanks. I am really excited to be here tonight to talk to you all and talk about wildfire preparation and preparedness. I'd love to hear any questions from the group, but part of the reason why I'm excited to be here is I never want any community to have to go through what my community, my friends and neighbors and family members have had to go through. And I grew up in Colorado. I grew up in the woods and was always thinking about forest fire and fires in the mountains and in our little suburban neighborhood with fire hydrants that's really not anywhere near the woods. In Louisville, we just never expected to lose so many of our friends and family's houses. And so over 1,000 houses were lost just in suburban neighborhood like I'm in now. And many more thousands more had terrible smoke damage that we often don't talk about. So I'd love to share the stories and then just share some ideas on how people can be prepared so that the same things don't happen again in the future to other Coloradans. Thanks for having me.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to say that I see a lot of our partners in the audience, and I just want to thank you all. I'm going to talk a lot about the partnerships and collaboration that we've had with the High Park fire, the flood, and then the Cameron Peak fire. And most of it was done through our partnerships and our collaborations with everybody in the room. So thank you very much for that. And tonight, that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about is some of the lessons that we've learned from those previous disasters that we took for Cameron Peak, which made things just a little bit better. And then the lessons that we've learned to go forward. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. It's wonderful to be a Larimer County resident. I've actually I'm a resident. I was born and raised in the southern suburbs of Denver, but in the last 20 years, moving all over the country with the U.S. Forest Service career, and it's just really exciting to be back in places that have an enormous amount of stories to tell. The paradigm shift after 2020 in this state is significant. The conversations that I've been having as I've moved about the state in this new role signal to me that the elements of our success in facing down some of these challenges and as well as taking advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us are rooted in community-based collaboration, sharing, and learning. And so this setting and the conversation we're about to have is exactly the type of conversations that I hope to have all over Colorado. So thank you so much for inviting me to this one in my backyard.
And we're very lucky to have all you here. I couldn't tell you how excited I was that you all agreed. I was like, oh wow, I hit 1,000 here. I batted 1,000. So let's go to the first question. Part of improving our community's resilience to the future wildfire disaster is to learn from our past experiences with it. And so in this vein, are there any stories that stick out from your previous experiences with wildfire that you'd like to share with our audience, such as any lesson learned or best practice, or any story you might be useful for people in our audience to hear that might help them with their efforts in the future to prepare for wildfire? So I'm going to go ahead and this round, I'm going to start with Ashley, and then I'll let you start first. But I know Ashley has some stories, and her and I have shared as we hang out at commissioner conferences and stuff, some stories. But what would you like to share today with the audience?
If there's nothing else that people do from watching this, I just would ask everybody to understand the insurance that you have and make sure that you have the coverage that you want. And so if there's nothing else anyone takes away, please check your insurance. With COVID and everything that we've seen in the state, when the fire came through our town, what people found was they were insured at a much lower level than it would take to rebuild their structure. And that was a surprise to a lot of people. So rebuilding rates in people's policies were around $150, $160 a square foot. And people are seeing well over $400 a square foot to rebuild. So under insurance, so the pain and everything, and I'll talk some more about some stories around that of losing everything, is bad enough in itself. If you can think of that, but to then not be able to really make it back. And the reason why people are making it back in our community and why we are so strong is because Coloradans are so generous and people have really stepped up to help one another. But we generally think of insurance as that thing that will be there for us when something terrible happens. And if you don't understand your policy and you don't understand your coverage, it just might not be what you think it is. So please check your insurance. But I do want to talk about some of the most painful things for just a really brief minute, and we have lots of good questions, so I'll add in later on other ones. But one of the most painful things to community members was the loss of pets. This fire came through our community so fast, and people were at work or other places, and so thousands of pets were lost. And that has caused lasting pain for people. That's really very traumatic, and there are lots of re-traumatizations around that. But a piece of advice I would share is to have a plan with your neighbors and your neighborhood on how you might evacuate your pet if you're not at home. So like my neighbors across the street have a nice little dog, and we have a plan on how I can get into their garage and house if they're at work and I have to evacuate so I can get their dog out. But we didn't have that in place before the fire. And so I just would encourage anywhere I go for people to have a plan on how to help your neighbors in an evacuation, whether it's with pets or maybe even like kiddos, or if somebody needs more help, like if they're less able than you, if they need help getting out, talk to your neighbors about what is our plan when we evacuate. And on that same idea, on your plan when you evacuate, like there were a lot of things our community just didn't know about when evacuating. So like really simple things like closing and locking your windows. Community members who did close and lock their windows had much less damage, very little damage that was quite easy to clean up compared to if you left your window open. When the wildfire came through, then that was, hundreds of thousands of dollars of smoke damage. And smoke damage coverage and insurance is really different. So close and lock your windows. That also keeps embers and firebrands from getting into your home. And so if you look at the patterns of the Marshall Fire, you'll see that some people, like the fire caught some houses and not others on the tail end of it. And it could have been a combination of many, many factors, but those fire brands getting in attics that weren't screened, that didn't have vents on them, and just getting in windows and starting those homes on fires that then the firefighters had to put out. So just things like closing your windows, having an evacuation plan for your pets. And the last one I'll say in an evacuation that was a big lesson learned for us and we got pretty lucky on is to carpool in an evacuation. And it doesn't seem like an obvious thing because you think, well, I want to take every vehicle I own to get them out of the fire's way. But the problem is that we didn't design our streets for everybody to leave their house at exactly the same time. And then if you think of a fire coming through, a big street might be closed. So the fire was going across US 36, which is the big route out of town. And so US 36 was closed. So everyone had to evacuate on small neighborhood streets. And so carpooling is a really important part of the evacuation process too. So once there is a fire, I provided some advice for this round, but I'll also talk a little bit about things you can do in advance of the fire coming that could help get you ready so that your chances are better for when that fire does come.
All right, so in the emergency management field, we have a saying, which is never waste a good disaster. And people make fun of us for that, but it's very true. We take every disaster, we kind of look at it, and then we see how we could do better the next time. When we had the Hyde Park fire, I didn't work for Larimer County at the time, I worked for the state of Colorado. And then for the flood, I worked for the state of Colorado. And I was hired really because of those two events and started in January after those two events. And I went around to each department head right after I started just to kind of learn a little bit about what they went through. And a lot of them said, I never want to do that again. I never want to be put in a position where like our criminal justice director was our debris operator, just because he was there, he was capable and he figured it out. And then we had some people who were pulled into the disaster assistance center. They just didn't know anything about it. They didn't have the training in it. And so that was one thing where I kind of learned, or I heard that over and over again. And then with our community members, when I was talking to them and our community partners, they just kept saying that everything seemed disjointed. You know, it would have been good to have better communications, better coordination. There was some duplication of efforts that had happened after the Hyde Park fire that they wanted to try to solve, and recovery was kind of disjointed. So we started meeting, actually the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed started hosting some meetings to really talk through that. How can we do this better for the next time that we have a fire? How can we all collaborate and coordinate better? And I really do think it was because of those meetings and some of those earlier conversations that then when we had the Cameron Peak fire, only about 2 weeks into that fire, the Forest Service reached out to me. Robert with Forest Service reached out and said, let's start talking about recovery and what we need to do to coordinate, who are the partners that need to get involved in that. And I think that that made just a world of difference. The fact that while the fire is burning early on, obviously, since we didn't think it was going to be a 5-month-long fire, but early on, we started talking about who are the people that need to get at the table. And then we also created tools and sites that tried to coordinate permissions that people had given us for work on their land. We coordinated project areas. We were able to get emergency alerts out to project teams, volunteers, because all of that was coordinated between all the partners through a collaborative that we formed. So that would be the big thing as far as a story. I think that is important that each of these events, we should really not just look right after the event and say, what could we do better, but keep working on that. And then every event kind of build from there. But we have great partnerships out here. You guys probably hear that all the time. We talk about it a lot, but I'm not joking when I say that. And I think our partnerships are much better now that we've had the Cameron Peak fire and we've seen that we can do it really well. We can do it better next time as well.
So that was what I was going to hit as well, and really it comes out of this community's experience, you know, the pre and post fire checklist and the planning concepts. You know, for years we really focused on, when we discuss wildfire preparedness, really on identifying values at risk, planning on treatments and evacuation mechanisms and things that or plans that we would do to respond when the fire happened. But there was not a lot of emphasis placed on post-fire recovery. And you know, when that fire started, the lowland fire started in Gunnison County, there was a lot of folks that forgot that I was no longer the district ranger of the Gunnison Ranger District and reached out about what was going to happen, how things were going to, and I had to, you know, put them in contact with the right officials of the U.S. Forest Service. But one of the commissioners I was talking to was relatively new and was asking, you know, what are your recommendations on things that I should be focusing on? And I said, a seasoned, experienced commissioner would already be thinking about recovery at the moment in time that the fire began. And so as we think about how we can be resilient as a community, we have to think about the full spectrum, the totality of the issues that we're going to face and the challenges that we're going to have to take on, not if, but when these events associated with a growing climate and a warming climate and a growing population occur. And so I'm really excited that the State Forest Service is trying to, one of the recommendations that came out of the Forest Health Advisory Council was to take this on statewide and to start to look for resources that that could help formalize what a post-fire playbook might look like, and to integrate that into the planning that would occur at any county, in any community in the state. Because we acknowledge after the Marshall Fire that our understanding of the wildland urban interface is radically different than it was just a few years ago. And so the risks associated with wildfire are significant all across the state, regardless of where you live. The other piece that I want to highlight that has a tie to this community and the Cameron Peak Fire, but also examples elsewhere, is that mitigation works. It really does. I mean, it's, there are very few instances where you get to point to this idea that like these treatments, I guess the best example from Cameron Peak was the Shambhala Center, and this, we all know this story because you were all nodding, so I'm not going to replay it, but the work that the Larimer County Conservation District, in partnership with others, committed to, created the unique characteristics that allowed suppression activities to spare and to minimize the damage to those facilities. And so it was a good shining example that hopefully will cause others to embrace this sizable scenic change that occurs when you manage forests aggressively as it relates to wildfire risk. Another great example is Summit County, the Buffalo Mountain Fire. There's if Executive Director Dan Gibbs was here from DNR, he'd have this giant poster and he would pull out and show you how the mitigation activities conducted by a suite of partners, to include the State Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the county, EM, as well as others, created the environment again for safe suppression activities to spare what's estimated upwards to $1 billion in losses that could have occurred should the neighborhoods that were directly adjacent to the wildfire as it burned would have been impacted. And there was a conflagration potential that very similar to what we witnessed as relates to the Marshall Fire. The bottom line is that it's a fundamentally different world that we live in, and we are we're existing in another very dynamic climatic environment just now. I mean, we're trying to understand why we're getting so much moisture in at times that we perhaps haven't. We're trying to understand how we can what we should be able to anticipate as it relates to these continued presence of these high pressure systems that create these heat domes that have sustained deeply impactful drought. And so if we know the system is going to continue to be dynamic and unpredictable, and there's uncertainty built into all of our calculations, then we have to be equally dynamic and adapted in the way that we take on facing down these hazards and absolving ourselves of these risks to the extent that we can, which means we're going to have to experiment and innovate. And let me just tell you, government loves to experiment and wait, no. No. So it's difficult for governments and for entities to experiment and innovate because we can't always predict exactly how things are going to go, and the applications of our solutions may not be perfect. And yet the way that we can incentivize risk-taking and innovation in the way that we're facing down these challenges that are in front of us is broad community support to experiment and innovate and take aggressive action in the face of this dynamic environment in which we're operating. I'm hoping that every individual resident and every individual community across the state can continue to show the type of commitment and interest in the issue such that individuals like myself and many in this room continue to push the envelope and see what we can really achieve together. Because I can tell you, one of the things that bums me out from time to time is that the past practices that we've relied on for many long histories associated with the organizations that have jurisdiction and responsibility for these issues aren't necessarily working anymore. And yet it's really, really hard to pivot. And so we need your help to, number one, keep pushing, right? Keep asking hard questions, but also keep showing up and showing your support for ideas and approaches that may not have been on your radar or part of the conversation recently, but mitigation works.
Thank you, Director McCombs. That's exactly why I wanted to do this. What you just stated about we have to try things differently and push the envelope. And that's exactly why I wanted to do these forums and have this discussion, because I think the more we raise awareness and talk about it and get the public support and understand awareness and that social license that we can get things rolling, it's really important to have these conversations. So that was spot on. Thank you for saying that. So I hate to do this, but I'm going to reverse direction because I feel like this is conversations we've been having a lot lately. So I'm going to start with you, Director McCombs, on this next question. For Northern Coloradoans and for all that live along the Front Range, the risk of wildfire is ever present and growing. Can you speak to why sustained work on improving the health of our forests is an important component to mitigating this risk? And or are there any specific stories that you'd like to share with our audience that might highlight how forest health is critical in navigating our wildfire risk, which is exactly what the Forest Health Council has been trying to work on. So
Thanks, Commissioner. So our forests are in trouble, right? Sustained drought over many years in combination with infestation and bugs and crud that like to attack trees when they're weak, as well as a rapidly growing population that continues to push deeper into the interface between communities and wildlands, creates an environment where we have, the science doesn't suggest, the science is conclusive that a healthy forest is the best way that we could navigate the challenges that we're facing down as it relates to megafire and the persistent growth in wildfire risk across, not only here in Colorado, but across the West. And I can tell you that our friends in the Northeast, right, who thought they were immune to these issues, have had a radical engagement with reality as it relates to the fires burning in Quebec. And so, we had an amazing fire season that I participated in, and it provided some leadership around in the 2006, what they called the fire siege of North Carolina, where again, entire communities were shocked to find that with 3 weeks of drying, anything will burn. And we saw live crown runs. I mean, live fire runs through the crown of live green oaks. Folks, didn't really think these things were possible. And so, what we've determined and what we're trying to pursue is this idea that we've got to give our forests a chance, and the best way to do that is to ensure that they are functioning at their that the composition, structure, and function of the ecosystem itself is in the best shape that it can possibly be, such that when we have really long dry seasons, that trees aren't in competition with each other. So that talks, that's talking about the structure and thinning and ensuring that the legacy of fire suppression has created a lot of overstocked, unhealthy forests. There's a combination of ways that we can approach altering that structure such that those trees will have a better shot when they're under stress or under attack. And we have to be kind of open to the entirety of that. This community in particular, through the NOCO Fireshed Collaborative and leadership from the Raptor Roosevelt Pawnee National Forests, is really pushing the envelope on the conversations around prescribed fire. And how do we move our communities and move our mindsets into this concept of living with wildland fire, acknowledging that it's a fundamental component of a healthy forest is natural return intervals of wildfire. How do we get to a point where we can embrace that in our own lives on a daily basis? Because I can tell you, when the smoke hits the air, all of that context quickly falls away. A lot of that learning gets pushed aside as we start thinking in survival mode. And it's very difficult for a fire manager and others to make really tough decisions around restoring fire to ecosystems when they're under this intense pressure to suppress. And then we find ourselves in this sort of feedback loop associated with the challenges of restoring fire in a way that's meaningful in the long run. In addition, forestry works. We have a proud legacy in this nation, which is essentially one of the origin stories of forestry in the world. And we've learned over time that our focus historically on agricultural production of trees using wild landscapes perhaps isn't in full alignment with our values and isn't actually fully representative of our understanding of ecosystem services. This idea that forests provide wide variety of services just by being forests alone, and yet everyone loves logging, right? In the room, go ahead. Yeah, that's right. Everyone has a really healthy sensibility around this idea that cutting trees is a good time. No, that's not the case. It's a very challenging topic for a lot of folks to accept that removing trees is a good thing. And so, again, communities engaging with the science, engaging in learning opportunities to grow their understanding of how forestry has shifted over the last 125 years and how we're approaching landscape scale restoration now is exceptionally valuable, because again, it incentivizes our willingness to take risks and try things differently. And also allows us to potentially move to the scale and size of the problem we're trying to face down. So everything that we're trying to do as it relates to forest management, restoring the resiliency of forests' ability to resist the pressure that they're under, that's both human caused and also part of the natural cyclical cycle associated with those ecosystems, is really, really important. And I hope that I'm so proud of Commissioner Shattuck McNally for buying the big burn and the greatest good, and learning about the unique histories that are associated with forestry here in this country and certainly here in the state.
Yeah, I knew he was going to hit that out of the ballpark. And I have to say, yeah, I had, that's something I had to take stock of and watch and get myself used to, seeing trees going through some mitigation work. And I'm glad none of you were watching me, because I viscerally and physically, as watching these trees in this mitigation project, I was literally jumping and like, oh, we can't watch. But I knew it was important. And so I had to rethink a lot of my thoughts on that. And it's due to a lot of you in the room that kind of took me and said, hey, come watch and come learn. So I appreciate that. So Lori, what would you like to say with this?
Just really quickly, and this kind of tags on to what you were just talking about. One of the things that we're trying to really work on, whether it's legislatively, policy wise, or otherwise, is the land ownership issues that we have for mitigation. Mitigation does work, but we have a difficulty where the county can't work on private land. Our nonprofits sometimes can only work on private land. The federal government works on federal land. And so it's very difficult to have these landscape scale projects that have meaningful impact, because we run into a number of different barriers, especially if we're trying to use big grant dollars to do a really big impactful project. They don't allow it because most grants only allow certain land ownership. So we're really trying to work on that at the legislative level, both at Colorado and federally, to try to break down some of those barriers so that we can do better work that's project focused instead of land ownership focused. And I think that we'll have a better outcome that way.
Thank you very much. I just want to add very briefly, I think the Forest Service has done a great job with communication this year. And I really do think in this space where we all are committed to forest health and the community cares deeply about the forest, just communicating and making sure people understand why and what's happening and when goes a long way. So for, Southeast Boulder County, where so many people lost their homes, it could be a little bit re-triggering to smell and see smoke. And we're all seeing it and smelling it every summer now. But when the Forest Service is doing some big mitigation projects and burning, they were thinking, okay, how will this impact community members? And so they put up message boards and sent out information to community leaders for us to distribute and get out to people, and just hold some pre-meetings and talk about what was going to be happening and when people could expect to see smoke and where they could go for updates to make sure that the controlled burns were under control. Right? Because we've all heard stories of times when that's not happened. So just ways people could get information, have access to information, and be able to feel in control of the situation. And the Forest Service just went so above and beyond this spring, making sure that people in our community in Boulder County were aware of what was happening so they wouldn't be re-traumatized. And I'll just be forever grateful for that. That kind of communication, I think, builds more strong bridges in the long run for healthy forest management, so that people can have a better understanding of the why, so that they can commit to it. Because we get our water from the mountain areas, right? We want the forests to be healthy. We rely on the mountain to take carbon out of the air, right? To reduce carbon emissions. And I heard one of the Forest Service people say, with some of the fires that have happened, our area's forest, for the first time in most of our life, were emitting more carbon emissions than they were taking in. But healthy forest management can turn that back around. And so just really relating it back to the watersheds, the fire sheds, the air quality, and things people know and understand, it gets the buy-in from the community, and people are really dedicated to this. So just continuing collaboration, which Commissioner Shattuck McNally is so stellar at, and communication will keep it so the community's on board.
Thank you. And I was just thinking, when we talk about forest health, and thinking about some of the lunar landscapes that, Lori has driven us through right after the Cameron Peak, and then after, the big Black Hollow, and seeing all that debris in huge piles taller than me, you realize soil health is so important, because the soil's been sterilized, and how was any forest going to regrow? And I think everyone here in the cities, you think, well, why do I care what's happening up at 10,000 feet? Way that I can't see? But really, forest health, soil health is watershed health, and it is our literally the lungs of our area. And so everyone in this room and every person in this county and state should care about all of this, because all of this is our air and water, and it impacts all of us. So I think it's really important. So we have a little bit more time. We have a couple of questions. So recent, and I know we want to save some time for those in the audience. So recent disasters in our state and beyond have brought a good deal of focus and attention on how we can prevent or lessen the impact for any future disaster. What are strategies you see coming into sharp focus in the next few years, and strategies that will be critical to future proofing our communities? And this is what I was speaking on the national panel at the National Association of Counties with Harris County and Greene County. And we had some of the senior advisors to the president listening in. And so just really quickly, what do you think is a couple of strategies to help us kind of future proof, if we can ever do that? Let's start with Lori this time, and then we'll go to Ashley and then to Director McCombs.
All right, I'll be quick. I think that one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now, and it's a challenge that we're trying to address right now, is the woody biomass utilization. So we have people who are ready, willing, and able to mitigate and to try to reduce that risk and to help us for that next disaster that might happen or that next fire. But now we have so many slash piles throughout our county that people are going to be less willing to mitigate because they don't have any place to put those piles. We can't burn the piles fast enough because of regulations. We also have air quality issues. So that's a big thing that we're trying to work on right now. So how do we find, like you'd mentioned, innovative solutions for matching up the woody biomass with the industry that can use it? That's something we would really like to do more on and try to find some innovative solutions to make that happen.
And we are working on that idea with the Forest Health Council. So fingers crossed. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. McCombs? We need that one of those ideas. Yeah, Commissioner Stolzman.
I love it. I'm just going to repeat a previous quote for the takeaway is that mitigation works. And so future proofing, from my perspective, you know, coming from the area that has the most expensive fire in state history, building codes work. If you look at the area and you look really closely at the structures that were destroyed and the structures that weren't, the fire went through a commercial district and an adjacent residential district right together. And the commercial district was largely made out of concrete cinder block construction without windows that open to the exterior. And the residential neighborhoods were made exclusively of wood frame construction. And you can see a dramatic difference in the effects of fire on the two types of construction. The commercial properties maybe had a little bit of damage to the roof membrane that they had to work on, and the juniper bushes outside were destroyed, but the commercial buildings are still there and the neighborhoods are gone, completely gone. The biggest commercial building that was destroyed was the Elements Hotel. It was wood frame construction. So you can really see that building codes make a big difference just looking through our fire and looking at the buildings that withstood the fire and the ones that didn't. So things like vent screens, materials of construction, siding choices, landscaping choices makes all the difference in the cost in recovering from the fire. So the best thing everybody can do to future proof is think about what are some of the cost effective things you can add to your existing structures, like vent screens. Can you trim back dead landscaping within the 5-foot zone of your house if you're in an urban area, and then, you know, work out from there? One thing we have trouble with in the urban areas is some of the impact zones overlap with your neighbor's property. So talking with your neighbors and using some good old fashioned, you know, collaboration or just giving each other a hard time to get each other's properties in order matters too. And then things like decks, fences, patio furniture, all the flammable things that we love to keep next to our houses makes a big difference on the resiliency coming after a fire. So mitigation works.
Thank you. And I actually toured some of those neighborhoods with your predecessor right after the Marshall Fire, and I'll never forget that too. It was snow on the ground, but it was just amazing. Whole neighborhood's gone. So Director McCombs, what do you think about that?
Yeah, one of the most important things I think communities can do is rely on what is now, you know, almost a 20-year-old policy, which is the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, right? This is like one of the most elemental mechanisms by which a community can come together, identify the values at risk that are in front of them, and think through how they're going to mitigate and undermine those hazards and create a better risk posture for their community. It's also like an amazing education tool. It's an amazing way to bring people together to talk about this issue in a long format so that learning can occur, relationships can be developed. And in addition, it's in a way for you to take on this commitment to adaptive management and acknowledge that, like, a plan should not be shelved. It's the living document. It's something that should be part of the conversation on hopefully at a minimum on an annual basis or in real time. And it's also an opportunity to integrate that post-fire playbook concept, or this idea that the idea of resilience is bouncing back after taking a hit, right? And so if you're already thinking about how you're going to recover the moment that, you know, you sort of take that slap to the face, this analogy is not going very well, then you're already moving towards recovery. You're already moving towards bouncing back and becoming a stronger and more connected community in the face of tragedy. And I hope that, and I know that I'm looking at our supervisory forester here for the Fort Collins Field Office. I know that Max takes this seriously as well, and he's here to help whenever you're looking to dust off that CWPP and continue to facilitate those really, really important conversations.
Okay, we have 1 minute left. I saw you, Josh. But I'll give you 15 seconds each. So just give me an opportunity to leave our audience before we get to questions with one key message you'd like to take away from today. What would you want people to walk away with from today?
Check your insurance.
Everyone has a role and a part to play, whether it's preparedness, response, mitigation, or recovery.
Do your part and mitigation works.
And I would say strong partnerships and collaboration and coming together. We're better together, and you can't make friends when you need them. So, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all. That was pretty, I mean, we could talk about this for hours. And we do. Trust me, we do. It's always laughing, but we'll be at a conference tomorrow, and I promise you, we won't be talking about the Barbie movie. We'll be talking about policy. We can't stop it. We can't help ourselves. It just happens. So we'll go to some questions in the audience, and we got about 10 minutes. So our amazing staff here are going to bring you a mic. So raise your hand, and if you have a question.
Thank you. I heard of a construction material years ago in California that the exterior for regular residential housing is actually fireproof and bulletproof. Not that we need that, but I'm wondering if there's any initiative in Fort Collins and the county to look at different materials for housing construction.
Well, there just so happens there is a state law that was passed. I think we can go to that. It's called the WUI Code, the WUI Code bill, and then we have one of our code building officers in here, so you'll have to correct me if I don't have this correct. But they're building a WUI Code board, and they're going to be looking at, as I say we, because I've been actually having some conversations this week about that. Building this board and looking at codes, because I know everyone's worried about it driving up the cost of housing, because I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of gotten expensive to live here. But we do know Headwaters Economics has got some great studies and some great research looking at the cost of mitigation versus just not doing it, and it's actually not as expensive as you think to build new homes with construction. When he built our home 20 years ago, I remember, because I live in that urban fringe and kind of that wildland urban interface. And as I say, I've seen probably 5 fires from my front porch. So we built that concrete siding, and we went ahead and made that choice. And I'm really glad we did. And we, built a nice big, mitigation. That was 20 years ago. And we chose to do that. No one told us. So I don't know why I guess we just worried about burning our house down. So that code and those building codes are coming forward. And I do think that cost of those materials are way cheaper than they were 20 years ago, for sure. And so I think those conversations in that board going forward is going to really drive some of these conversations. As you know, that was a really hard fought piece of legislation this year in the current legislative session that just ended in May. And so I think that there's some of that's going forward. Anything else anybody wants to add to that? I think that as we find and learn lessons from the Marshall Fire and others, and even from some folks in this room I know have had to rebuild their homes from the Cameron Peak fire, I think looking at those costs and thinking about future proofing, I think it's people are realizing the importance and the benefits of doing that. But look up Headwaters Economics study out of Montana. They have a really great article on that. Does that help answer your question? And then watch the state WUI Code board that's going to be built, and let's see how that develops, because they're going to develop those codes for the whole state, and there'll be that bare minimum, and then any county or community can always go above and beyond those codes. Anything else you want? Anybody? I think I covered that. Yeah. And yeah, we don't stop talking policy. Trust me. It's interesting. So any other questions? Come on, you've got some great folks here to talk to.
Hi there. You're speaking about policy for houses going forward. I'm a community member that lives in the urban interface in the mountains at 8,500 feet. And we have a cabin from the, 72 that obviously is, not what we were thinking about back in the day when we purchased. So what are your suggestions for people like us that, you're not just gonna all of a sudden take your D-board, D-log down and start from there?
So I think it's a great question. And being born and raised here, I have friends that have, 100-year-old cabins, and certainly they do what they can. But there are some folks in this room, Raina in the back is an expert here, that she can come up and actually come to your property and help you find, stop me if I'm promising you something, like throw something at me, that they will talk to Raina. She'll come up and walk around your property, because that's what we do as a county. And she's going to help you, give you ideas. And maybe over the long run, you just slowly make changes. Like, I know I need to go back now and, reevaluate. I have some wood that's being used, the old what's the word I'm looking for? Wood, how you use to stain, that's got petroleum. I probably should stop doing that, right? And do something different. So how am I going to change that in the front of my house? Because I have a pergola on that attached to my house. I got to think about that. And I do live far enough out of town that, I don't have homes next to me. It's going to be what's going to be through the trees and stuff. So, so it's something that I think we have these programs to help folks as you, and I would really highly recommend to have them come and help you, give us some suggestions. So they're really good. Go ahead.
One thing on that too is a lot of folks, I think in our recent fires are seeing this more, but a lot of folks don't realize how far embers can travel. So they think that they're pretty far away, that, fire's never going to reach them, when it could be the ember that gets on the roof or otherwise. So there's some stuff, I think, that it wouldn't be tearing down your whole house, but there are some things that can be done for the vegetation around your house. And then the roof is also something that's, very important for the wildfire area.
I would add, just for everybody, there was a Rocky Mountain PBS aired on Sunday, a fantastic presentation on living with wildland fire, and it covers in depth what an individual homeowner can do to mitigate the risk for their specific property around defensible space, learning and understanding the home ignition zone, and what things that you can do to reduce risk there as well. And so I would actually encourage everyone in the room, if you didn't have a chance to watch it, it was done by CSU, the journalism department, and in partnership with a bunch of officials and agencies and entities across the state. Just a great example of storytelling, and it's got some really fantastic examples of how mitigation was taken on and was super effective in sparing a home when the homes around it were not.
And I also forgot to mention that Max and his amazing program, I think you have some home ignition materials right out here at this table. And Raina, what's the name? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Forgive me. It's been a long day. The name of your program? Wildfire Partners. Yeah. Yeah, great. Wonderful. And I think you're right. It's just a lot of information. I took some folks hiking up to Dare Mountain and Rocky, and we got near the top, and I was pointing out the east, the Thompson side of the East Troublesome. And they went, where did that come from again? I said, the other side of the horizon there on the other side of the mountain. They go, how far was that? I said, miles. And they were, they just were blown away that much damage came from an ember that traveled over, the Continental Divide. So it's just a really good example, and still seeing that burn area. Right. So I got scolded by one of the senator's office. Are we not saying scar anymore and only burn area, or what's the latest? Because I said, they said, don't say scar anymore and say burn area. So I want to make sure I'm using the right language. So, okay. So any other questions before our next panel? We've got some amazing folks here. Oh, we have any online? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Commissioner, we do have one question from online, and that is, would it be possible, or is it feasible to use public taxpayer dollar to acquire and provide air curtain burners in certain locations to help, properties to encourage mitigation?
That's one of the things that we're looking at as innovative solutions for the slash piles and the burning that goes on in the private subdivisions. Public money, though, there are laws about how we can use public money. So it would most likely be a partnership with some others or some grants that allow us to use it for that purpose.
And just want to add one thing, in Boulder County, the community members put forward an effort to tax themselves to do additional wildfire mitigation for a few reasons. One, just to be able to be more responsive, to buy equipment and do things like ditch maintenance and do additional chipping and additional wildfire partner work, additional home hardening work for community members, but also to leverage the money for other federal grants. And so, if you're able to put in $1, the federal government's much more likely to give you $1. And so we can really take the tax money that they've chosen to tax themselves with and then try to expand the amount of work we've done. So something like that could be done someday if the people wanted to do something like that.
And then the General Assembly came over the top with an incentives for local governments program that was designed specifically to incentivize local governments to pass similar, it's essentially a debrucing effort to raise capital in your own communities. And we have great examples across the state of Colorado. Summit County, Chaffee County, Boulder County are really great examples of where every single, and those resources have been incredible leverage that have unlocked literally millions of dollars in both state and federal grants. We also have the forest restoration and wildfire risk furworm program, which has a 25% of an annual $8 million allocation is available for equipment purchases for communities for capacity, like curtain birds or other disposal tools, chippers, and things like that. So your local state forest service supervisory forester is more than happy to help assist in grant development proposals and submittal, and then hopefully, if you're awarded, administering those as well.
So one more thing that I didn't mention is if you are a community member that can work with you in your community to do some mitigation work, we do have a mitigation grant here in the county that can give property owners, it wouldn't just be an individual property owner, it's tried to get communities to work together. But if you have a community willing to do some mitigation, you can apply. It's usually January of each year. You can apply for a small grant that could get you the equipment. It could get you staff that would help you. It could just pay for the food and materials that you need, whatever it is to try to get that mitigation project off the ground. So that's a project we have in our office and Office of Emergency Management.
And one of the recommendations of the Forest Health Council is for us to have a mitigation statewide for counties who want to opt in for, hopefully they get picked up by the legislature, which it seems like some folks were interested, for statewide mitigation days where we would bring industry to hopefully come and help gather that biomass and get communities to work on kind of a mitigation day, so we can have kind of a mass effort to get all the work done and then get the slash and the woody biomass off the landscape and into other uses that are emerging technologies that I know the county is very interested in pursuing, and I know the other entities as well. So yeah, lots of good answers with that, but yeah, we got a lot of work to do. Other questions? Oh, come on now. Some stories. Okay, someone's got me on. Camille, is that you?
Sorry.
Any questions for any story, other stories, or any? Yes.
I'm Dolores Williams, and we have been mitigating up at Crystal Lakes. I just took some lunch up, and we have volunteers, just homeowners who have learned how to do chainsaw stuff. And I think grants like that, grants to help all of these, this was a community thing, but the locally or regarding the 5 foot around your house. Well, my son works with somebody who was in that local, the fire you're talking about around. He said that his house did not burn down because it didn't have the bushes all around it. Bushes all around and a fence that's going to come up, a wooden fence can take your house. So of the people, so here I am in Fort Collins, 25 years I've lived in my place, and we're supposed to, well, we just put bushes all around our house, don't we? No, for us, so I'm saying my son is after me about the bushes that I put around the house. Well, I just cut them all down for 5 feet and put rocks is what we ought to do. Right? And that's the I'm just sharing that with everybody. All of you people in Fort Collins who live with me, we need to get those bushes around our house and put some rocks there for 5 feet. And that's going to be tough.
Thank you, Dolores.
And
Appreciate
that
it.
needs to be broadcast.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I just want to add, there are some bushes are worse than others. And so the CSU has shared information with our residents in the community of sort of some plants are better than others. I mean, we did hear the oak tree, jumping from top to top, but like get rid of the junipers next to your house would be a good idea. But there are some things that retain moisture and help retain moisture in the soil. And just making sure you don't have dry material. A lot of times there's dry brown grass, cutting that back, making sure it's watered, making sure your things are not dry next to your house. So thank you for your efforts. And we even did change our codes in town. So the code used to say you had to have a cedar fence, and it was like these neighborhoods, they all got built with the cedar fences. So we changed the rules so that the section attached to your house didn't have to be a cedar fence anymore. You could have a non-combustible material attached to your house. So looking at HOA rules and building code rules to make those changes is really important, but I really appreciate you bringing that forward because that'll make a big difference.
Thank you so much. And we're out of time for our first panel. And I want to just remind everyone, just in case you need a quick break, is we have public restrooms down the hall and down towards the end, and you can go to the left and there's public restrooms there and some water if you need. And there are, as you see on these back panels, a list of all of our partners. And there, as you see, if you have a question that you didn't want to ask, but you want to get answered for later, do that QR code and submit your questions, and one of us will have us, any of us, we will get back those answers back to you. So with our panel, well, we could keep talking, and I wanted to get some more stories. I know I wanted to see if we could get Chief Zagorda, but we'll have to do some more time where we can share more stories. So, I want to just stay on time, and I want to thank everyone for their time, and I hope you felt this was helpful, and I hope you all felt this was helpful, and we'll move on to our next section of our presentation. And so thank you, Lori Hodges, and thank you, Commissioner Stolzman, and thank you, Director McCombs. Stick around, you're gonna head up.
Pleasure.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, our next item. And I just want to say, like I said, I really felt pretty thrilled and honored that all those folks agreed to speak with me or come speak on this panel today. So we're going to move on to our next part of our program. And I hope you all felt that was a little informative. Of course, like I said, we could talk for a long time. So, so now we're going to talk, have to help me here. We're talking Sheriff Office, what I thought. I'm looking at my panel. I'm like, so we're going to invite Captain Keaton and Raina up to talk for a few minutes about their program, which is really important. As I mentioned, Raina could come and help these homeowners, and they're going to share a little bit. As you know, Larimer County is very unique because in 1978, we started emergency services program. Not all counties have this, and it's been around, and I think it was really innovative. When we talk about taking risks and being innovative, this was one of those innovative things Larimer County did. So I'm going to let you share about this, and then I might ask if I can just leave a couple of minutes. I'm going to let Chief Zagorda share a little bit about Glen Haven and how that whole community is still dealing with post-fire flooding, and how they really have done a really great job as a whole community, because I've been up there where they all show up and help their neighbors. So I'm going to let you take over, Captain Keaton. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I very much appreciate it. And I appreciate you putting this on and getting the community together. So again, Tim Keaton, I'm a captain with the Larimer County Sheriff's Office, and I am the division commander for emergency services. I'm not going to spend much time up here because I work for her and she's a lot smarter than me, and is got a lot more information I think is going to be interesting to you guys. One of the things I was going to share, Colorado is one of only 3 states in the United States where the sheriff's office is responsible for fire suppression. How many people knew that? A few? Some all the fire guys in the back go, yeah, of course I knew that. That's my life. But that's interesting because it brings a unique perspective, right? People think, what is the sheriff's office doing in fire? It's because we are statutorily mandated to fire suppression. We are not statutorily required for fire mitigation. But as you heard up here, it's hugely important. It works. It's vital to making our suppression efforts more effective because we mitigated beforehand. And that's why I want Raina to speak about her program that we have literally just kicked off as of about January, February this year. I'm not going to talk a lot about suppression efforts with the exception of one thing. We have changed tactics a little bit in how we fight fires that are starting in Larimer County. And I want to give a plug to the county commissioners, all of them, for allowing me to do this. And that is, I'm getting very aggressive with aviation assets. How many fires did we have in 2022? And this isn't total fires by any means, but it's fires that raised to the size that my team had to get involved. Anybody want to take a guess? You don't count. You know, doesn't work. Right? That's the scary thing. But how many people would be surprised to know that we had 52 fires that rose to the level that I got involved in it? That's a big deal. But here's the important thing that I want to bring across to this. 100% of those fires, all of them, were held below the national standard of a large fire, and that's 300 acres. And one of the biggest reasons that is because I've become, not me personally, but the sheriff's office, because we've been giving the funding to do so, has become very aggressive with aviation assets. Get on it early and keep that thing small. Now that's great, right? What's the problem with it? It's expensive. When I ask them to turn those airplanes on, the dollar signs start rolling quickly. But so kudos, thank you very much, because what do we spend on Cameron Peak? 130 million, 135 million? Not we.
I think it was over 130 million, but that's still toiling up. But the county, that was over 130 million for suppression alone. And then the counties was 16 million for the county. So yeah.
And we spent less than $1 million. Not much, but correct. But we spent probably in the neighborhood of $970,000 last year on aviation assets to fight these fires and keep everything below 300 acres. So that's important. So I'm going to talk about with suppression, because probably more important things. What should you expect if a fire the size that you need to leave your home starts? How are you going to get notified, and how are you going to be asked to move out of your house? We have the executive leadership and the senior leaders of LEDA in here, and that's hugely important. They're out here at a booth. Vital that you get signed up and opt in with all of the options you possibly can within LEDA, because that's how you're going to first learn and be notified early. It may be time to start putting things together and getting ready to go. Very, very, very important. But when we throw up the green light and say, all right, it's time right now, it's time, it's a mandatory evacuation, everybody needs to go. We are going to use every law enforcement resource, emergency services resource at our disposal to go door to door, because it's not good enough to just send out emails, texts, any electronic notification we can. Not everybody is plugged in. Not everybody is listening to the whatever resource that might be at the time. We need to go door to door, and we do that. So not only do we, when I say we have law enforcement and emergency services going door to door, you know who else we call up? We call the sheriff's posse. Now you guys you know why? Because they jump in their pickups, they hook up their horse trailers, they don't put any animals in their trailers, and they start driving west. Why is that? You guys are going to laugh, but this is funny, not funny. When we show up, human life's the most important thing. But as we heard from the commissioner, right? Pets are important. And there's a lot of people who say, I am not leaving without my horses. I've got 8 of them out there. I've got 1 2-horse trailer with 3 flat tires. Oh, damn. Well, we take those things into consideration and we come and we bring resources to fix that. Vitally important. We're going door to door. I'm not going to talk a ton about our internal ways of identification and all that, because I want to give some extra time to what I think is more important. I talked a little bit about the fact that mitigation is not statutorily required, but we see so much value in it that we are committing resources to do it anyway. We stood up a brand new program this year that Raina is literally building from nothing and knocking that out of the park. So I want her I want to defer the rest of my time to Raina to talk about that. And it's going to answer a lot of great questions that came up. She was sitting back there jumping up and down when some of these questions came up. So Raina, take it away.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the time. And thank you, Commissioner Shattuck McNally. I wouldn't be here if we didn't have incredible support at the commissioner level, at the county leadership level. My position was created and I started this job in April because of the leadership and support of our commissioners. So they are listening to you, they are paying attention, and they're taking action in creating my position, which is the Wildfire Partner Program Coordinator. And I handle wildfire inspections throughout the county that are required for building, planning, and zoning, but I'm also building out the Wildfire Partners Program, and that is from scratch. So I know I was told I had 18 months basically to build it out. So I still want to hold on to that. Okay, that's right. I mean, because of our amazing collaborations and partnerships with people that are in this room right now, that I can see Poudre Canyon Fire, Pinewood Springs, Crystal Lakes. I'm training with your folks tomorrow. Glacier View that'll be presenting later. Because of the collaborations, we already have 5 of your fire departments as affiliated members of the Wildfire Partners Program. We've already started field training. We've already done a few. We're going to do some more tomorrow. And we are already hitting the ground. I did 7 of these assessments right up over top of Horsetooth yesterday. So been here 4 months and we're already out in the field doing this stuff. So we're getting high speed, low drag, is like it would like to say in the fire department. So a lot more to build. It's going to take a lot more time, but we have a great foundation. So what the program offers, I'm the coordinator, but it can't work without our ambassadors that I see in the audience here. And one will be presenting later from Glacier View, because there's only one of me and we're a big county. So the idea is that I'm building the program, and then we'll have these affiliates at fire departments, HOA groups like yesterday, that I will train on how to do exactly what our last panel was talking about, which is coming out to a property for anyone who requests it. Someone was asking for that in the front row. Spend an hour or more with any property owner in Larimer County that wants it, giving you a full, thorough, personalized assessment of what you could add or subtract from your property to make it more wildfire resilient. And notice that I didn't say wildfire safe. We are never going to be in a safe wildfire area. So we say resilient. And everything that these ambassadors that are being trained now to offer you is about empowering you as landowners and homeowners to move your property towards safer. Okay, I like to think of it as the same way that there's no guarantee that if we eat our vegetables and exercise and try to cut down on the salt, which I'm terrible about, that we'll live a long, happy, healthy life. I mean, Betty White lived to be 100 eating hot dogs and red vines, but she's the anomaly. So our program is the same. It's going to empower you to know exactly what to do on your property specifically to give you the best possible chance that your home and your valuables will survive a wildfire. Okay, so what we are able to provide right now to each individual homeowner is a Wildfire Partners home ignition zone assessment. And any property owner doing one of these, either through me or one of our wonderful ambassadors here in the room, you're going to get a comprehensive report with pictures. It's basically like a storybook of how to make your home more wildfire resilient, so you know exactly what to do. And this is all provided free to any homeowner in Larimer County. Also, let me scroll here. Attached to every single one of these assessments are some wildfire resiliency resources. And that includes before the fire facts, a homeowner's insurance agent conversation guide. And this is something that I developed with a wonderful community volunteer who has 30 years as an insurance agent. She just retired. And now I'm gonna steal her and bring her over to the county as a volunteer. So that's my evil plan. Is that cool, boss? All right, you heard it here. Anyway, she developed this resource because the suggestion that was made earlier is perfect, is yes, have the conversation with your homeowner's insurance agent before the fire, check your policy. But I don't know about you guys, but I don't understand everything in my homeowner's insurance policy. You buy a house, the stack of papers is a mile thick, you sign it and hope for the best, right? So this guide that's attached to every one of our assessments will help you ask the right questions, informed questions, understand your policy better, and how to ask questions that you just wouldn't know to ask about coverage, about does your policy cover renting an apartment for a year if you were ever in that situation of losing your home? What about the cost to scrape the lot clean and rebuild? All of those things are included in this conversation guide. And the idea is we want to empower you as the homeowner to take the lead. We will collaborate with you, but this is really all about neighbors helping neighbors, which is a kind of the tenet of the program. So that's included. You also have resources attached about how to do a home inventory, document everything that you own, which is also going to help with the insurance piece. If you were to lose everything, you'd be able to prove what you did own and get those reimbursements faster. So there's a guide attached right here for that. There's also a tax credit form. Has anybody heard about this already? This is always like the big thing that people love. So Colorado Department of Revenue offers an annual tax credit for wildfire mitigation. Depending on the year, it's either 50% or 100% tax credit, up to $2,500 every year for private homeowners to do wildfire mitigation on their own property. So you buy a set of gloves, pruning shears, lawn bags, pay to have things pruned and dropped off at the dump site, whatever it is. You keep those receipts. You have this document that you share with your tax professional. It's actually pretty easy. I've done it. And you get that tax credit for your own land. So that's also embedded in the assessment that'll go out to everybody. And then just some preparedness guides about how to pack a go bag, get on no-co alerts, all that kind of stuff. So you're getting a lot of value here included in these assessments. And we are building the program out now, but we've already got several departments affiliated and will continue to affiliate over the next year. But I think we're already moving ahead much faster than was anticipated, only because we have such amazing community volunteers that are helping me help you. So we have.
I want to add in there, and Lori brought this to me. I'm glad she reminded me to state this. If you think it's time to go and you haven't had the knock on your door yet, it's okay to go. You're getting ahead of the crowd. We've already heard about traffic, right? If it's time to go in your mind, go. So don't think you have to wait for us to knock on your door. Oftentimes these things get so big that communication of them is unavoidable. If it's time to go, go. I want to give somebody up and then we'll stay up for questions.
No, I think I was just looking for my leader alert on my phone that I got today. So as a commissioner, I signed up for all of them, but it's I really appreciate this program. It is kind of new, and I'm really glad that Raina and Captain Keaton shared it today and spread the word, because as you asked, can someone do this? So this is your opportunity. And so also we have great staff here at the county in our planning department. I see some of those folks in the back of the room, and I'm sure if you have questions, you can always call and ask the planning department and some of our folks in code compliance and stuff that can give you information. And then we have our amazing climate smart, future ready, or what is our new name? Forgive me. Is that close enough? So we're also looking at this as a county with climate change and how we're going to become a more resilient county. And so we're also embedding this in all of our departments and all of our work internally, and also trying to work with a large group. I think we have had 80 people in the room working across different sectors to make sure this is kind of embedded in all our work going forward. So is there any big questions? Because they knew that I was going to run over. I apologize, but I always run over. So Dolores.
Excuse me. How do we sign up for the mitigation? Is that a local here?
Right here. She'll hand you a card and you can call her.
Oh, very good. Very good. Thank you.
Just email me. A lot of times I'm out in the field and I don't have cell service like yesterday, so calling is a little sketchy, but my email's right on here. I got a stack of cards on the table right there. Come grab one.
Good.
Email
Oh, good.
me, say you'd like
Okay.
a home ignition zone assessment. We'll get you
Oh,
some cards.
thank you. And does that include out in the boonies and here in town? I mean, I have a cabin in Crystal Lakes, which is right in the,
I
it's-
was in a truck for 5 hours this week to go out and do one inspection. So yes, I come to you.
okay,
And I'm training your Crystal Lakes folks tomorrow.
Okay.
So soon.
They
we'll
will,
need local people
they
who
will
can
do
get-
it.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Because right now they have something like we pay $35 and somebody will come out and look at our,
Yep.
I haven't done that yet, but you're training them, those who are coming out. Okay, that's
You
what
bet.
my question.
Okay.
Thanks for what you're doing.
And then you're going to hear from some of those folks that are those ambassadors, which I appreciate. I'd asked them to come down from their beautiful homes on this beautiful evening to come down and share. So, and again, if you don't want to ask your question, we have the QR codes and you can submit that and say you'd like to submit this question to these amazing folks, and then we can get answers back to you. So hope you'll take advantage of that. Go ahead.
Is this only for home ignition zones? I've got a big mouth.
But for the people on the Zoom, sorry, it's all the webinar.
I was just wondering if this is just for home ignition zones, because I have property in Crystal Lakes too. I don't have a home there. And the majority of the properties up there don't have a home on it, but it's really important that those are mitigated as well. How are you approaching people that don't need the home ignition zone, but still need to mitigate? Are you involved in that?
Great question. Thanks for asking that. We absolutely will come out and do an assessment, even if there's not a structure on it. And when I had a very productive meeting, maybe a month ago now, with the chiefs at Crystal Lakes Fire Department, we discussed that and the importance of mitigation on properties that don't have structures, and where people aren't there but 1 week out of the year, and those properties are becoming overgrown. So we're aware of that. Talking about ways to possibly address it through some land use codes and other options. But for now, absolutely, we'll come and do an assessment, and everything that's relevant in this assessment when there is a structure is still relevant when it's just vegetation. It's called the home ignition zone just because that's what the wonderful guide that we use from Colorado State Forest Service calls it that, but it's totally available if there's not a structure.
Okay, we're going to move on because I'm a problem commissioner by running over, but no, it's my fault because aren't these guys great? So. Okay, and I'm glad we're recording this, some great information. I'm going to call up the next panel. I think you know who you all are, so come on up. Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to stay back. Hey. Aren't these amazing? Again, I'm like, wow, I'm so lucky. These are amazing, amazing partners. And they're the ones that have brought all their information, but these also are doing some important work in the community. And because really, not one entity can do all of this. We got to do this together. So I am going to move on to this next panel. I'm going to do quick, brief introductions. And I owe these guys a lot because they also, as a Forest Health Council, I convinced the Forest Health Council to come to Larimer County to see the great work we're doing. And I wanted to get them out in the field, and these guys helped arrange a phenomenal tour that actually planted literally some seeds about seed deficits in our country that we're looking at some legislation for. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to just go on my list. So, and then I'm going to give you like 20 seconds to add one more thing onto my introduction, because I know these introductions, as you saw the introductions before, are not adequate for these amazing folks. I'm going to start with Julie Dubin, who is from Peaks to People Water Fund, and she is the director of the Peaks to People Water Fund, and she is a graduate of Duke University with a master's in environmental management, and dedicated most of her career to helping U.S. youth connect with environmental and cultural initiatives and ecosystems around the world. She is a Colorado native like me. I didn't know about that, Julie. And long-term Fort Collins resident, and is passionate about building connections and harnessing our collective efforts to make a critical difference in our watershed health at this very critical time. So Julie, you want to add anything to that for like 10 seconds? Anything else you want to add?
Just that I value our partnerships and collaboration so much. And that's the key to everything we do.
Amazing. Thank you. And then we have Laura Quattrini. It's like, if you don't know me by now, I have a phobia of not pronouncing people's names right. And so it makes me overthink it. And Laura is the director of the Big Thompson Watershed Coalition, which I used to volunteer with some restoration work, which I'm telling staff now, I'm going to block out some volunteer time. I need to do more of that. And has over 20 years experience in working for conservation nonprofits. Throughout her career, she has focused on applying science to natural resource management, engaging in collaborative conservation efforts with a wide range of stakeholders, partners, and landowners. And she is deeply embedded in many conservation initiatives in Colorado and acutely familiar with the watershed and forestry issues facing Western communities. And yes, I would say she's deeply embedded, because everywhere I turn around, there she is, which is great. And it's awesome. So anything else you'd like to add?
Into the microphone. Yes. Yes, I do see you all over the place, don't I? That means you're really busy. But yeah, I guess I've been on since January of 2022, and it has been a whirlwind ever since. There's a lot going on, and I'm really happy to have met all these wonderful people up here and in the crowd as well.
Thank you. And now I'm going to talk to Hallie Stribby. And she's the executive director for the Coalition for the Poudre Watershed, and has a diverse background in both wildlife and ecology with degrees from Colorado State and Montana State Universities. And Hallie's family has a cabin on the Poudre River, and I'm told she spent much of her childhood fishing, hiking, and cross-country skiing in the watershed. And that's pretty cool. That's kind of like how I was brought up too. And Hallie has a breadth of professional experience with previous roles in the Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, the Restoration Ecology Lab at CSU, and an ecological consulting firm. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Would you have anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think anything to my bio, but just happy to be here. So appreciate you putting this together.
I am super excited, and I think we're gonna have to make this an annual event. So, all right. And then we have Gretchen Runing. Okay. See, I told you. Laramert Conservation District, and Gretchen is the executive director of the Laramert Conservation District, and is the original forester of the Laramert Conservation District's Healthy Forest Initiative. And Gretchen grew the roots for what is now the Conservation District's forestry program and what it is today. And thank you for that. And she has overseen 4,000 acres of forest restoration treatments in Laramert County. That's a lot. And Gretchen has a master's degree in plant ecophysiology from CSU, and she's a wealth of knowledge and a great collaborator with experience in natural resource management and forestry in Colorado, Illinois, California, and New Zealand. And that would be interesting to talk about sometime. And then we have Don James from the Estes Valley Watershed Coalition, amazing group that's been doing some pretty cool work up in Estes. And Don serves on the board of directors for the Estes Valley Watershed Coalition. And she is the board treasurer and lived in Estes Park for 10 years. And she has over 30 years of multi-industry leadership experience with an expertise in global business optimization and portfolio that includes multinational companies and startups from across the globe. And she is the CEO of Process Interventions LLC, a global business consulting organization, and a passion for improving the protection of wildlife and their environment. And wow, that's pretty cool. This is the story, right? You retired, you went to Estes, and then you started some more work. Yeah, that's a lot of people in Estes. But I bet you, if I ask this question, you all have worked together before. Yeah, so that's what's so amazing. So great second panel. And I think I could have talked, each of these panels could have been over an hour long for each one. So again, I think we're gonna have to repeat this and do this more. So this is our test pilot one. So first question The health of our watersheds is critical for our way of life here in northern Colorado in various ways, and the health of our forests and its susceptibility to severe wildfire is critical for our watersheds. So simply, our watersheds and forest health are completely linked. Can you highlight a project that your organizations are undertaking that speak to the intersection of watershed health, forest health, and wildfire risk reduction? And since we're running out of time, I'm going to leave you to like 2 minutes each because we have a bigger panel. So, and I'll give this, and I can let you have one of my mics, but let's start here and work. Can you guys pass the mic and we'll start there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So as we know, the Pooter is no stranger to wildfire, which is one of the many reasons why CPRW's work combines the need to improve watershed health, forest health, and the needs to reduce wildfire risk. So when we started in 2012 after the Hyde Park fire, we knew that we needed to start working to reduce wildfire risk across the watershed, and that link between water quality and healthy communities and that was a huge need. And so we, in 2016, developed our Upper Pooter Resiliency Master Plan with partners, which we'll talk about. And that plan kind of links together the different values. So watershed health, healthy uplands, healthy water, water drinking supply, and reliable drinking supply, because as we know, we have many high mountain reservoirs and the headwaters that can be impacted by wildfire, and they have been, along with the need to reduce wildfire risk. So we've been working off of that master plan since 2016 to work in priority areas. And one of those that I wanted to highlight today is our ongoing work in the Elkhorn Creek watershed, specifically. One of the areas that we've been doing work since 2015 is on the Ben de la Torre Scout Ranch. And so this area is a really key tributary to the Elkhorn Creek is key tributary to the Pooter River. And so we've been working here with a variety of different partners, have had a mechanical thinning, prescribed fire, and hand work by sawyers. And so this has been a really key showcase project for the community. We've been able to show community members far and wide what forest restoration can look like, and that's been really valuable.
And Gretchen.
All right. Well, I feel really lucky, first of all, to be part of this panel, because just looking around at all the folks here, you know, like Jody mentioned, I've been working in the forestry world here since the beginning of 2017. So got to see a lot of changes over the years and changes for the better. So I think, you know, the project that I would really love to highlight would be the collaborative project that we have going in the Pole Hill and Waltonia communities. So with a few different partners in this room. I think, you know, there's a ton of different examples, so it's hard to pick one, but I think what's really important about that project is it hits on all of the different objectives and goals that we're all working towards, all kind of smooshed into one project. So, you know, I think earlier in the last panel, someone was talking about ecosystem services. So that project really hits on all of those values that we hold dear in Colorado and Larimer County. So we're looking at, you know, source water protection. Northern Water has their infrastructure that goes right through that Pole Hill community. We're looking at community protection. There's a lot of, you know, 2 to 30 acre parcels up there. So a lot of homes, a lot of people living up there full time. So that's a really cool part of it. And then just the wildlife habitat benefit, and of course the wildfire mitigation benefit. So it's a really cool project where we get to kind of touch on all of those aspects. And it's been especially great to work with, you know, partners up there, because we've been able to leverage each other's resources in terms of funding and expertise. So Peaks to People was able to write a grant through Furworm, through the State Forest Service, to match with the co-swap grant that we've been working on with the county. And then that was all matched with some Natural Resources Conservation Service funding. So just a cool partnership that I wanted to highlight.
Amazing. And I actually have friends that have a property up there, so I've been listening to how pleased they are with that. So great to hear. So Julie.
I would take this in a little bit of a different direction, as opposed to talking about a specific project on the ground. One of the projects that we've been working on is forming the Big Thompson Watershed Health Partnership. And so about a year ago, we recognized that there seemed to be a gap in some of the coordination in the Big Thompson watershed specifically, and that there's so many amazing agencies working in the watershed and doing great work, but lacking some of that kind of regular communication and coordination between projects. And so we started convening this partnership, and it's now grown to about 15 organizations and agencies that are meeting regularly. And a big piece of our goal is to make sure that we're aiming for that landscape scale impact that we heard about earlier today, and cross-jurisdictional projects as well, so that really looking to increase the scope and scale of work, leveraging each other's strengths, as Gretchen mentioned, and also working through challenges together. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, you mentioned that it's hard to find friends right in the immediate time that you need them, and so much more valuable to build trust before you're in that crisis time when you need to really figure out how to collaborate and work together.
Wow. I'm around all these people here that have that environmental experience or forestry experience. And I have to tell you that if you don't have it, if you have a passion, you can learn very, very quickly on how you can actually help your community and help the place that you cherish the most. One of the projects that I want to just highlight is we're up in Estes Park. For those of you who don't know where the Estes Valley is, and our watershed is north of, or I should say west of the dam. It's a very small population, but the two fires really kind of caught our attention. I think everybody's attention, the East Troublesome and the Cameron Peak, and we were surrounded. So we have an obligation to not only protect human and structural assets, but also the water that is at Estes Park flows down to the Front Range. So we have to protect the water. 50% of Fort Collins water comes from Estes Park or flows through Estes Park. And not many people know that. So we take it very passionate. We have a very strong passion, I should say, to protect that water. So we have the Marys Lake Forest Health Project and also the Thunder Mountain Project, which are communities, private landowners that are bumping up against federal land as well, where we're trying to go and help mitigation efforts to slow down the fire. We can't stop the fire. We know fire is going to happen, but we can slow it down so it's not so intense. If we can do that, that means better health, a better quality of water. If we can protect the water, protect assets, protect the forest, it all is cyclical. And that's what we're trying to do. So those two projects right now are ongoing. We have close to 200 landowners. We have participation that's overwhelming when it comes to homeowners. 50% of the landowners that we're trying to tackle right now have given us authorization to go and do tree inventory studies on their property so that we can identify what trees are important to take down, what type of fire mitigation aspects that we need to be focusing on. So those are the two. And just remember, our water sources Fort Collins, at least 50% of it. So thank you.
So I already forgot what your question was. So I know it's okay. I'm going to take a whirl at this. So instead of focusing just on one particular project, the Big Thompson Watershed Coalition works with a number of different communities in the Big Thompson Watershed below the dam, sort of splitting up jurisdictions. And we are focused on the Waltonia community. I've been working with Larimer Conservation District and Peaks to People and the county on projects there, and the Storm Mountain and Cedar Creek communities, as well as the Glen Haven and the Retreat communities. And I do want to point out, there's a huge amount of acreage in our very large watersheds, the Poudre watershed and the Big Thompson watershed. And we have to decide, where can we focus all of the limited amount of funding and capacities that we all have. So we're working through the Big Thompson Watershed Health Partnership. We'll be applying to the Colorado Water Conservation Board through their Wildfire Ready Watersheds program. And that process will help us prioritize where we're going to be working in the watershed, along with many other resources that we have. So the Colorado State Forest Service has a Colorado Forest Atlas tool on their website that also shows where the biggest wildfire risk is in our watersheds, but also where are the areas in the watersheds that potentially will have, if they burn,
they could potentially have the biggest impact on our water quality. And so I think part of your question, Jody, was asking, you know, what is the intersection or what's the connection between fires and our source water? That's it. We see it with Cameron Peak Fire right now. All of the rain that we've been getting, all of the sediment that's coming into our water systems, that impacts our drinking waters. And that's what we are all working to try to mitigate for. So working with communities, working with individual landowners, and also working to increase the capacities of our communities. So a lot of the discussions that have been happening are talking about this, and I could talk for a long time about this.
Thank you. And, I want, Lori, you'll have to make sure I get this correct, but, one of the first times back in 2016, I think 15 was after the Big Thompson floods, I started volunteering and I did some projects with Big Thompson Watershed, doing some restoration work along the river, planting, some of the needed foliage to get back. And what I learned is how important riparian areas are in our community, not only for, just the water health, but, all the species in the water. But it's only Colorado is 1% of Colorado is in a riparian area, I think that's actually I got from DNR. There's not that many areas, and this is from my national panel, so I should have remembered this, but 80% of our wildlife use that 1% of the Colorado. So riparian areas are so critical, and these are also along our watersheds. And so there's also that, besides our drinking water and the health of our forests and stuff, it's critical lifeline for our wildlife. And so and bugs and everything. So it's just really even bigger than just us humans, but we've got these other species and our community, the people that live on this planet with us that are not humans, that are relying on us to get this right. So their next question, and I apologize to our ambassadors, I'm running over your time, but but as you can see, we have a lot to talk about. So the second question is, I just want to say, we're so appreciative of the efforts your organizations undertake to protect some of the most important natural resources. And I have to say, it's very inspiring to witness and be a part of this collaboration that happens among these organizations in this work. And some may not get to see the behind the scenes things that I have gotten to see. And I know even more happens that I don't get to see because they keep me busy. And so all this collaboration teamwork that occurs when implementing projects and programs, can you tell us why these partnerships are so important and how these strong partnerships strengthen our and your capacity? So 1 minute answer.
Yep, I can start. Almost every other word out of our mouth is about collaboration. So I was amazed to be a part of that when I first started. And I can say that when I started, we were an organization that was 2 people big. And in a year and a half, we've become a little over 4 people big. And the amount of time that's required to plan these projects, to work with stakeholders, to develop relationships and build trust with landowners, it takes so much time. And, if you're an organization of only 1 or 2 people, it just, there's just way too much work to do. So it is so important to be able to work with our partners to really make a bigger impact across the landscape instead of just working, with the individual communities that we do.
Yeah, I'd have to also agree with that. The Community Wildfire Protection Plan that most communities should have, if they don't have one already. We were instrumental in helping out the fire district up in Estes Park and helping with that. But we had to collaborate with about 5 to 6 different organizations and agencies to get that done. And it takes truly a huge collaboration and partnership. And that would be one area where if we didn't have that, because we are that organization where we have 1 person and then we have 7 board members that are all volunteers. If we didn't have that collaboration, we wouldn't be able to get the things done that we get done on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I would say that our work only is possible through working with our partners. We are an organization that leverages funding and provides strategic direction on
project selection. Like Laura was mentioning, we're short on time and we're short on resources overall in this area for this type of work. And we need to be really strategic in the type of projects that we're picking. But we are not an implementation organization, so we can't get the work done without working so closely with our partners who are up here on this panel with me to get that work done, as well as leveraging funding from other partners like the Colorado State Forest Service to get that work done.
Yeah, I would just add that I think with all of our partnerships that we have here, like it would be really easy for all of us to just kind of throw our hands up and say we have this huge problem to deal with. But I think what makes us all really lucky is that we're all seeing this more as an opportunity than an obstacle of just the problem that we have to work through. So it's a huge problem that we have to work through, but the fact that we can all kind of stand shoulder to shoulder with each other and share some educational opportunities and some of that messaging, and then work together towards a shared mission. I think that's what ultimately makes us successful as a collaborative. And then, all the things that come along with that, all lands, all hands, and all hands on deck is really, I think, something that we all really focus on in these partnerships. So feel lucky to be here.
Yeah, I think that's the theme in every event that we're a part of. So collaboration is literally core to CPRW's mission. It's in our mission statement, and that's really how we get anything done. Similarly, we're a really small staff. We have 4 people currently, and everything that we do, we rely on our stakeholders, our partners, landowners, the community to accomplish our work, to help us prioritize, plan, and decide where we're going to put our resources. And I liked how I wanted to echo what Lori said, that those different planning sessions that we had after the High Park fire, where we did different scenario planning for what, when a future fire happens, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get the resources? Who's going to lead which efforts, was really critical in the response to the Cameron Peak fire. And, with Larimer County and the Forest Service and the municipalities and our other partners, we've been able to raise millions of dollars for post-fire recovery, and are putting, those dollars to the ground in these high priority areas. And that's only been done through collaboration.
Wow, you guys said it so well. And I call it the Larimer way. I'm not sure. I'm sorry if Commissioner Stoltzman, I was born and raised Boulder County, but I know you guys have your way, but the Larimer way of collaboration and partnership. And I think that's our mission here too at Larimer County, as we partner with our residents and our partner agencies, and we've gotten to do so much together. So you both said something about mission and core values, and so this is our last question, and then we got to move on to these wonderful folks. Like I said, I could sit here and talk to you all for hours. There's so much to talk about. But moving on in the future, what would be the most important thing you forecast as having a critical impact to your organization's mission and effort? So if you had a chance to mobilize a collective effort, if we got all these folks in this room to mobilize and into the future, and you had one priority held by your organization, what would that be and why? For 30 seconds.
So one of our organizational priorities, we just redid our strategic plan, so is community engagement. And I think that is key. If we don't have an engaged community, then we don't have a coalition. We're not able to accomplish the work that we need to. So I think that's present here in the room tonight, and it has been with all these different events that we've been a part of over the last 10 years. So
I 100% agree with Hallie, and I'll just take it to the next step of, after community engagement, advocacy. So, we all have our different strengths that we can bring to the table. So community members can definitely bring things to the table in terms of advocating for what we need to get more of this work done. So, working with the county commissioners to work for legislation, advocating for wood product markets, all of the above is all really important.
I would completely echo what you both have said. And the one thing I would say is that we've been talking a lot about partnerships and collaboration, and I would really look at our communities as other partners, individuals, businesses, our communities in general, as extremely important partners in this work.
Again, I think you heard the word. I think I have to agree with what they all said. Ours, when I heard about that question, it was about marketing. How do we market? How do we market collectively? And if we could have one message that is consistent from all of our coalitions and collaboratives and organizations, just having that message. it would not only help us get a single message across, but also if it could be funded and assist us in getting that message out, I think that would be the key issue. That would be important to our mission.
I recently participated in the Larimer County Strategic Planning summit. Was it last week or the
Community Leaders Summit?
Community Leaders Summit? And I was talking to a lot of other community leaders about what I do and what our organization does. And they were like, I had no idea. I didn't know that sort of thing. Like, we actually have to thin trees. So that is an issue. And, you know, they don't realize that that could potentially affect their drinking water. It could affect the air they're breathing, you know, if another fire were to come through. So investment, like, that is something that we need to tell and convince our community members that we need to be investing in this more. You know, we talked about how fighting the fire and suppressing the fire was over $130 million. That's a lot of money. And the recovery is a lot of money. The recovery funding that we got, actually, I mean, it's kind of terrible, but it allowed my organization to hire on a couple new people, and it's increasing our capacity to mitigate more land to prevent or make more resilient the landscape for other wildfires that might potentially come through. So we need more investment. I mean, it costs way less to treat the forests and thin the fuels than to suppress the fires and recover from those fires afterwards. So finding the funding in a steady, consistent way would greatly help all of us.
Yeah, wow. Again, thank you all. You're an amazing group. I'm so grateful that you have all collaborated, and I know we have some county folks there, and please keep me on the calendar so I can come when I can come. And we got to continue this work. We have a lot more, and this is why I wanted to have this forum to help, and we're recording it, and hopefully we can share this with you so you can share it on your website if you want to. But we need to do more of this, as you've learned at that summit, and to help educate the public about why we need to do this and the scale and scope of what we need to do here. And it's not only here, but also in Boulder County and just our whole state. And so we have to look at this as you know, wildfire and watersheds don't really know boundaries and lines. And so this is really a regional effort as well. So thank you all. I would keep you up here forever, but I'm going to invite our next folks. But I want to thank you for being here with the tables, and we'll do this again, I promise. So, and I was going to let you ask questions, but we're running late because I didn't following the time late. The staff worked so hard on. Sorry, Josh. And we're going to run over. I'm just sorry. If you got to leave, you have to leave, but we're going to run a little over. So I'm going to invite Todd Hausman, who, and I think is there someone else that's coming up, Josh? Or and then I'm also going to invite Chief Segorda come up, because I might have him ask Chief, if you wouldn't mind sitting up here with me, I'm just going to have you ask you a couple of questions right at the end. And Sheriff Finn, come on in. Sheriff, come on in, Sheriff. John Fan, come on in, Sheriff. I see you. Everybody, our Sheriff John Fan. Just want to say hi. So go ahead. And this is Todd Hausman, and he lives in Glacier View and is the coordinator of the Glacier View Fire Adapted Community Alliance. And he's going to give it, and this is an amazing group. I've been up there listening to them, and I believe this is one of the most innovative leading, and well, also what's happening in Glen Haven, but this is an amazing group that's doing amazing work. And really, I put them up against any other group Glen Haven be pretty tight, but any group in the state, these guys are doing amazing work. And so I'm going to just want to give you a praise, because they're commendable. And I'm just so proud of all the work you guys are doing, because they're neighbor helping neighbors. And you guys have, you really have impressed me with the work that you've done. So I'm going to let you go over, Todd, get started, Todd. And then I'm going to let Chief Segorda share a few things, just a couple of things for time wise. And then we're going to wrap it up with questions. And then again, if you don't have time for questions, QR code, and then we can get back to you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you hear me now? I'm Tom Hosfeld. I'm with the Fire Adapted Community Alliance. which is part of the Glacier View Fire Protection District. And Josh, the clicker is not clicking. Oh, there we go. Okay, just to give you an idea of where we are, the black square is our fire protection district, and Red Feather Lakes Road 74E goes through us. We are up the hill from Livermore. We are down the hill from Red Feather Lakes Village, and then Crystal Lakes is even farther up the hill. And then that's Boy Scout Road that comes down from the northwest corner. You can see here that we had the High Park fire in 2012, where our fire district lost 50 homes. We had the Cameron Peak fire, which is the large yellow area there. The High Park fire was the largest fire in Colorado until it was surpassed by the Cameron Peak fire. We had 2 mandatory evacuations during the Cameron Peak fire. And let's say that our community knows that wildfires are not theoretical. So after the Cameron Peak fire, our fire district got a lot of donations, and we used those donations to create the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. You've heard of that before, that it's necessary for letting communities know how to reduce their wildfire risk. And I went to a presentation of our Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Great presentation. I learned a lot. I understood the risks. I stood up and I said, so who's responsible for making this happen? And here I am. So in the CWPP, it says that the CWPP will only affect real change if stakeholders come together to address shared risk and implement strategic projects on the ground. So within our fire district, we are led by our board. We have administration, we have operations, which are the EMS and firefighting people. But then we created the Fire Adapted Community Alliance. We also have the Community Mitigation Volunteers. These are a group of people in our community, not part of the Glacier View Fire District, but in our community that volunteer to go out with chainsaws and pole saws and actually cut down trees and do fire mitigation work. So within the Fire Adapted Community Alliance, we have different committees. One is information education. Another one, we run a Firewise. We had that on June 24th this year. Commissioner, thank you for attending that. We also have a grant committee looking out to get grants. And we have the ambassador program. And that's what we were talking about before, that Raina is helping us set up. So this is out of the CWPP. If you look at the four lower boxes, the dark brown is the highest risk, extreme risk, red is high, brown is moderate. So if you take the fire risk, just how many trees are there, what's the risk of fire in general? Next is suppression challenges. How hard is it for firefighters to get to that area? The next is evacuation hazards. How hard is it for residents to get out? As the sheriff captain was telling us. And then the home ignition zone hazards. How well mitigated are the properties, the structures where people live? You put those four together and you get the overall relative risk. So as you can see, our risk increases the farther west we go. That's because the farther west you go, the more trees we have. Again, the black border is our fire protection district. We have what the CWPP calls plan units. That can be anything from HOAs to maintenance organizations, community organizations. DU is also part of our fire district. We have nonprofits. The Wolf Sanctuary is in our district. Wolf Sanctuary has had a lot of work from CPRW to do fire mitigation there. The Boy Scout branch has done a lot of fire mitigation, which greatly helped stop the Cameron Peak fire. But the point is, as Lori said, these many different organizations complicate how we do our work. Even when the fire district works with the Glacier View HOA and comes up with a plan, that takes care of roughly 50% of our population. We have other organizations, some more organized than others, and some property owners have no organization. So we need to do plans to do fire mitigation across the board of these various organizations and non-organizations. We talked about the Larimer County Office of Emergency Management grants. We have received 4 of those in our fire district. The Glacier View Meadows HOA received $10,000 last year. That's how they chipped their slash piles. The Red Feather Highlands Maintenance Association, of which I'm a board member, last year we received $5,600. We removed slash from our neighborhood to a burn pile. The Red Feather Highlands Maintenance Association this year received $10,000. We are currently removing slash to the roads to be removed. And then the community mitigation volunteers, they got $5,000. They bought chainsaws, pole saws, protective chaps, personal protective equipment, so that people can use the organization's chainsaws instead of using up their own chainsaws, fuel, and oil. It's a considerable expense for as much work as they've been doing. So these are the completed mitigation projects. These, we focus first on the roadways because evacuation is all important. We've all seen videos of people driving through tunnels of fire in the campfire. You didn't see the videos from the people that didn't make it, right? So evacuation is all important. Again, the red areas are the highest priority. We've completed 2 within Glacier View Meadows and 1 in Red Feather Highlands. This is a picture of workers going through and tagging trees at Red Feather Highlands in 2022. Roads have easements, they have utility easements, right? Our bylaws say nothing about fire mitigation easements. It turns out that ditches are really good places to grow trees. Pine cones roll down hills, they get stuck in the ditch. They're watered more frequently than anywhere else in the forest. Soil comes along and buries them. 10 years later, you have a tree in your ditch. We use a secret weapon saying, we're going to clean out our ditches. And by the way, that means we're going to get rid of a lot of these trees. And that got rid of a lot of the opposition saying, you're going to cut down what trees next to my road? Oh, no, we're clearing out the ditches. So it was a big help. It's a trick that you might consider. This is work that was done this year in Glacier View Meadows on Green Mountain Road, again, improving our evacuation. Upper right is the situation before. In the middle is during the mitigation. You don't see any masticators, you don't see bulldozers, you see men and women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s chopping slash and hauling slash away. And afterwards, that's the same turn in the road. You notice how many trees have been limbed up, many trees have been removed, and this road will now be a lot easier to get out of in case of a fire. This is another active mitigation effort in Red Feather Highlands. People have until Labor Day weekend to do mitigation on their properties, either themselves or hiring contractors, asking friends and neighbors. We don't care how you do it, get your slash to the road. And the OEM grant, we selected a contractor yesterday that will haul the slash away after Labor Day. And our ambassador program. We are educating property owners on fire mitigation benefits, home hardening, ingress, egress, or emergency vehicles, beetle defense. It's harder for beetles to infiltrate trees if they're spaced properly. And we're going to be providing pre and post fire mitigation assessments. That's where RENA comes in. And we've provided contact information for fire mitigation contractors. And we're applying for grants to make all this happen. This is a page out of the home ignition zone. It's in our community wildfire protection plan. We won't get into that, but the first priority is for mitigation around the house and then moving out as we can. Our execution plan, Raina, has been a godsend. She was hired earlier this spring, and she is going to be doing our training. She has software. She will be doing the initial assessments with us ambassadors along as we train. She will generate reports before and after the mitigation and award a certificate after the mitigation has been performed. And we were notified last Friday that we won a $2,300 grant through Fire Adapted Colorado. We're going to be getting 3 iPads, protective covers, and other essential equipment so we can go out and do these assessments. And we've provided a mitigation contractor list. Josh has a list there that helps us. And we're looking for grant money. We applied through the coalition through CPRW for the Community Wildfire Defense Grant. Didn't get that last year, but we're going to try again for the second round. And hopefully we can get grant money for individual homeowners to do mitigation work on their properties. Current status, we had our Firewise event. Again, Commissioner, thanks for being there. We have 6 ambassador recruits, which is a start. Coincidentally, we have 6 property owners requesting assessments. They're not the same people. Training is planned for early August. Raina and I were talking about what days that's going to be. I talked about the award last Friday, and we're communicating with Jacob at Poudre Canyon and Robin in Crystal Lakes about their ambassador programs. So we're trying not to invent the wheel simultaneously in different ways. And Raina has been a big help with that. So we want to recruit, train, assess, communicate, and then repeat. So our tailwinds, we've gotten grants from the county. We've gotten a FACO grant. Headwinds, grants aren't available every year. The previous panel will attest to that. We have the support of HOAs, but the HOA funds are limited and not all property owners are part of an HOA. We have a seed group of volunteers, but we have to go beyond asking our friends to be members. We have to somehow do a better job of communicating and recruiting. We are generating slash. What do you do with it? The slash piles in Glacier View will be full next week after we do another mitigation project on the roads. We've gotten lots of motivation from both the High Park and the Cameron Peak fire, but we've heard that wears off after a few years, and Cameron Peak was 3 years ago. So we have to fight that fatigue. We have a lot of volunteers, especially our community mitigation volunteers that have a bias for action. They want to go out and do things, but our board, rightly so, says liability, liability, liability. We don't want to have anybody get hurt. We don't want you to damage anybody's property. We want to make sure that insurance is in place. We want to make sure you use your protective equipment. So don't just go dashing off. Think about the liability issues. So in March 2023, we burned our slash pile in Red Feather Highlands. It took us 2 years to burn that slash pile. Didn't have the right combination of snow, winds, air quality, firefighter availability. It finally happened on March 23rd. This is what it looked like the next day in the upper right-hand corner. And that's what it looked like last week. That now there's white wildflowers there, sorry. So that's the way we used to do fire mitigation. Except it wasn't that complicated. We would make a slash pile and somebody sometime when they thought there was enough snow would throw a match, right? Now, we don't burn slash piles anymore. But what we want to do is to establish the organizations, the routines, community culture that enable fire mitigation and educate the process for property owners to make that happen. I had an epiphany last week when I was driving down Red Feather Road. saw that sign for the Red Feather Residence Convenience Center. That's our local recycling center. If you're as old as me, you can think back 30 years ago when recycling first started going. You know, the Boy Scouts might have a paper drive. You might know a scrap metal place that would take your aluminum cans. Nobody knew what to do with plastic, right? But now, through the help of the county, not only do we have recycling bins in conference rooms, but we have convenience centers with bins that tell you plastic goes here, paper goes here, corrugated cardboard goes there. So if we can make fire mitigation practical to people that they know how to do it, just like recycling, not everybody's going to get on board, but for those that do, it'll make a better community for all of us. Thank you.
Amazing. Isn't it amazing? Just a great job. And I know we're over time. There's lots of questions, but I wanted to make sure Chief Sidora came down from Glenhaven, and Glenhaven has seen more than its fair share of fire and evacuation. And last year in post-fire flooding, I think the retreat, which is in your area, saw 24 flash flooding. And one of those events on July 17th was actually worse, the residents say, than the 2013 floods for the amount of water. So I just thought the chief was here. They've been doing a lot of work mitigation wise. I'm going to just give you a couple of minutes to share a couple of stories. And because you guys, we could sit here and talk for hours. And I know they're celebrating Friday, Saturday, Sunday, their 100th anniversary of the Glenhaven area. So that's another reason I wanted them to be up here. So we're out of time. And for all those people that have answers, and sorry, Josh, and everyone that's working today, I apologize, but this is really good stuff. Give you a couple minutes to share this, and then all these questions, maybe we'll just read through them real quick, and then we'll get them answers. But let's read them so everyone can know the questions, and then we'll get back to them and answer them later. So I knew this was going to go over, but we tried. But it's good information. So, Chief.
Okay, I'll be quick. So, not to repeat a lot of other stuff we already heard tonight, which was excellent, by the way. Thank you for organizing this. A lot of similarities between Glenhaven and Glacier View, I learned. We had a CWPP that was written in 2007. And when I became chief in 2017, it was pretty much completed. A lot of it dealt with what to do during a fire. And we wanted to shift our focus to what to do to prevent a fire. So that started us down this mitigation path. So the basic strategy of our CWP is create a ring of fire mitigation that totally encircles Glenhaven. Very difficult work. Unfortunately, Cameron Peak did a lot of that work for us. We've got dozer lines, we've got feller buncher lines, we've got burned areas, but the real work started with Team Rubicon, which is a volunteer organization of veterans that responds to disasters. And they scheduled a couple of work days, long work weekend in Glenhaven. And we focused on 2 dead end roads, North Fork and Fisherman's Lane, and did a fuel treatment at the end of both of those roads to hopefully stop or slow a fire down enough that people could evacuate or we could get in there and fight it. Little did we know, a little over a year later, Cameron Peak fire came right down Fisherman's Lane. That fuel treatment worked. We were able to get in there, protect those homes, and we saved nearly or over 40 homes in Glenhaven downstream of there that probably would have burned had it not been for that fuel treatment. The other point I'll make, we talked about mitigation works. We lost 5 structures in Glenhaven. We did not lose a single structure that had good defensible space because we could get in there then and fight it. I watched fire come down the hill and like water around a dam went right around the house because it had good defensible space. It works. The other organization we've been working with closely is Big Thompson Watershed Coalition. They've got grant money they procured and are helping us with the fuel treatment that we're currently working on Fox Creek. That's kind of the chink in our armor in our Circle Glenhaven with fuel treatments. We've been working it with resident volunteers and the fire department, and Big Thompson Watershed Coalition is bringing in some resources to work in that area and also do roadside mitigation along North Fork and Fox Creek roads, which in a fire are quite honestly a death trap. They're overgrown, they're single lane, and it'd be very difficult to get out, let alone get in. We do, fire department provides defensible space assessments free of charge to the residents. We had a ton of those requests right before Cameron Peak. We had the luxury of that fire starting 2 months before it reached Glenhaven. And I can tell you every weekend, all you heard were chainsaws. I had one family took 28 trucks of slash to the slash pile, and they're glad they did it because it saved their house. So in the interest of saving time, that's it.
Yeah, and you know, Darsh, I wish we had all day, but we're gonna have to do this again and share more stories, because there's amazing stories of courage and bravery and resiliency and community coming together to work together. Both of you are examples of what our communities can do together and how we can unite and work and partner to make a stronger, resilient community. And I'm very proud to be your commissioner, work hard on your behalf to help amplify your efforts and see what we can do about this grant funding and making sure we're all working together. So we have lots of questions online. Stay here for a second, but you want to just read these off so we can at least read them off. And so people can hear, we can hear the questions. We're going to have to answer them. We're going to have to answer them. Or do you want to?
No, I just wanted to say, I don't know if everybody here and everybody online knows, but Glenhaven is an all volunteer department as well.
Yeah.
So it's really community members helping community members.
Go up. Yeah. Yeah. I've been going up for 7 years to the pancake breakfast. It is an amazing event. People come from all over, and I think I pay at least $25 a pancake. So at least, which is great. But please go up and travel. They're amazing. It's actually really good and really good information. And you wanted to add something?
For the chief, I just want to say that one thing that we tell people, another reason to do fire mitigation on your properties is don't make your heroes be heroes. So don't expect the fire department to save you. Do your work ahead of time. Thanks.
Great point. So let's read the questions real quick, Josh. And then I'd like everyone, if you wouldn't mind, let's do a group picture of all of us. And then we're going to have to end, unfortunately, because I've kept staff longer than I promised. So go ahead, Josh.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Commissioner. So I'll just paraphrase some of the questions as opposed to reading them all. And these are questions that were submitted by our virtual attendees. So there's questions, some kudos to the panelists on the community partnership panel about it's evident your passion shows and you guys collaborate well. And so some folks are interested in your ideas as to how they can collaborate with their fellow neighbors. So be looking for that question in case you got any ideas. Other questions about actually more a suggestion. Some individuals quote unquote problem on their property may be a potential solution. So if they have young trees, saplings to removed and work in their home ignition zone, can they give them to you for reforestation efforts? So there's a thought there. A number of Raina, wherever you are, you're very popular. A number of questions looking for your contact info for the Wildfire Partners Program and just getting some information on that. Also, with respect to the Wildfire Partners Program and its ability, if someone participates in it, is there potential to reduce their insurance cost? So I know you get that question fairly frequently, but a few questions on that. Some folks are wanting to another plug for work in near the rivers. Yeah, just watershed health overall. You know, people asking how to get involved, that sort of thing. Yeah, and that kind of sums up, you know, a lot of the questions there. So
Thank you, Josh.
Sure.
And again, I'll repeat for anyone else in the room or online, there's the QR code, even our panelists, everyone just please submit that. I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank Josh Roberts from the Office of Emergency Management, as you really, I've been way over busy to you kind of help organize all this and brought all the partners together. And I thank you to each and every one of the partners. I hold you in high regard and I'm grateful for your work in the community. Thank you, Jay. For the technology, we didn't have any spoofs because this has been the first time in a while that we haven't had a Zoom things like have a little glitch. So amazing work. Thank you. And Camille, thank you for helping. And Lisa Puckett, who's on the virtual facilitator. And thank you to Raina and Captain Keaton and the Sheriff Faye stop by. And we have several other staff that are here in our audience from Lower County. Thank you. And thank you to all the firefighters I see in the room. You are my heroes and you guys are just so important to the community. And I just hope you know how much I value. And I want to thank Chris LeMay from the Department of Local Affairs, who's here, and he's our very, very happy to see you here. And thank you for being here. I hope you see how proud and amazing our partnerships are here, and appreciate your support and the work that you do for us. And with that, I just want to say, we'll do this again. We're going to do this in the spring. We're looking at doing this probably. And thank you to Lori Hodges for allowing me to utilize Josh so much, our amazing Office Emergency Manager. And we'll do this again. I think we should at least do this once a year. So we're going to do this more. And because we have a lot of work to do and a lot more conversations to have. And I want to just thank you all from the bottom of my heart for being here tonight and being part of this conversation. And I wish you well. Have a safe and relaxing weekend. Thank you. And I would have to say thanks to Commissioner Stoltzman again for coming up from Boulder County. Thank you.